Namaste, welcome to Satsang. So as always, we're gathered here together to recognize what we actually are, to move beyond the idea of what we think we are, which runs very deep for most of us. A lot of programming that we are a separate being alone in the world. And to come to a deeper experiential realization of that, which we actually are, because in truth, there is only one of us here. There's only one being, and it has many expressions as a human being, many forms, sentient and insentient forms, apparently. And the actual realization of that can sometimes be a lot simpler than we realize, and that's what I want to look at today. We were sent in a question which is, again, a really good jumping off point for some self-inquiry here. Self-inquiry is literally inquiry into the nature of ourself, what ourself actually is in reality compared to what we have come to think it is. And so directly experiencing what we really are is going to shift our identity over from thinking we are a separate being, moving through time and space, moving towards awakening or some goal that we have as human beings, and into a deeper seeing that we're already looking from where we are trying to get to. And maybe even before you've had a deep seeing of that, you can maybe imagine that seeing that clearly, that you're already looking from the place that we've been trying to get to, is going to give us a deeper wisdom and peace and a total inability to suffer. We're only ever suffering from our thoughts, what we think is true about ourselves, about the world, about others, about awakening, all of that. So coming to see that we're already living in and from the thought-free place, the place where thoughts arise out of, is what we actually are, then that has to come with it some clarity, some insight, some peace. So the question here says, hi Helen, I'm stuck on something and would love some clarification. What is perceiving bodily sensations and or thoughts? Is it the noumenon perceiving, or is a body perceiving? Also, is there anything the noumenon cannot perceive without a body? When I inquire, it seems that it's all the noumenon perceiving, which is pretty radical. I hope you can help here. Thank you so much. Lots of love. So this word, first of all, noumenon, if you don't like it, it's totally okay. You can swap it for awareness, self, presence, consciousness, beingness, whatever you want. Noumenon just means, it was a word that helped me get beyond my thoughts about what my real self actually was and into a direct experience. It just means that which is not a phenomenon, that in which all phenomena seem to arise is the noumenon. That which doesn't have any shape or size or any definable characteristics is the noumenon. But if you don't like it, it's okay. Just substitute awareness or whatever you want to say. So, what is perceiving bodily sensations and or thoughts? Is it the body that's perceiving this? Or is it something different? Is it the noumenon, the self, the real self? Let's have a look at that right now. Let's go into an experience of what that actually is. And we say my thoughts, when we say my mind, my emotions, my body, when we know that our body is hot or cold or comfortable or uncomfortable, restless, peaceful. What is it that knows that? What is it that perceives all of those things? What is it that's hearing what your ears are hearing right now? Your ears are hearing something, these words, it's happening in the body. Vibrations are going in through your ears. But what is it that recognizes the sound of the words? Is it something to do with the body? Is consciousness a function of the body? Or is it something much greater than that? And can we come to prove that here and now? So when you see a thought in your mind, where are you looking from? What is it that's looking? Very simple thing, a thought arises. I don't understand what Helen's saying. Or I do understand. Or I really wish I was at home. Or whatever it is that's happening. What is it that sees that thought? We say I, but can we find where that is when we actually look? Where is this I that says my mind, my thoughts? Where actually is it when we look? There's a sense, and I looked like this the first time, there was a sense that it was here. I am here. I am aware of my thoughts. There's awareness of thoughts or sensations, as you said here in this question. I know what's happening to my body. I know what's happening to my mind. I know if it's noisy or quiet. Where is that knowingness? And just slowing down with me now to actually look, where actually is it? Is it only in my head, that knowingness? Can I prove that it's only in my head? And when I actually look for where the awareness is, where the knowingness is that says my mind, my thoughts, something sees thoughts come and go. What actually is that when you look? Can you find, when you really look, as someone living in this body, can you find a someone, a person, a separate being, actually inside the body? Something is perceiving and it's also inside the body, but is that all the only thing it is? Is that the only place it is? Something that we've called I, something that says my mind, my thoughts, my emotions, my sensations. And it doesn't matter how many times we've looked like this and how clearly we've seen, we can always look again. It's delightful to look again and see again, see clearer each time. And in a strange kind of way with self-inquiry, not finding an answer, not finding a separate being, actually, there's something here that I've called me. Can I find where it stops, where it starts? Can I really say with certainty that it's only as big as my body, that it's kind of superimposed into my body shape? Or is it something different that have an edge? Can you really say when you look that you know where you start and stop? You're also in this body, you're looking through, you know what your eyes are seeing, you know what your ears are hearing, you know what sensations are happening, you know how your body feels. Where else are you? Where do you stop? Just actually looking with me now, can I actually find where I stop and start? What is this thing that's perceiving? Sensations, thoughts, sense perception. Can you find an entity called me when you really look? And shockingly, first time I looked like this, I couldn't find anyone. There was nothing that I could find that was a me, that I could point to and say, that's where it is. Something was present that I've always called me, that I just assumed was a person, a separate being. When I really looked, I couldn't find any boundary where this me started and stopped. I couldn't find any defining line where I stop and you start. It was really strange. When I began to get interested then in what it actually was that was perceiving, if it wasn't a separate me, if there wasn't an entity called me, separate to everything else, what actually am I then became really important, actually, because my whole life, my whole awakening, my dreams, my goals, my desires were all based on this fictional character that I'd taken myself to be. And where does that leave me then without that fictional character? And what is it I'm calling me, really? And how does that change my life for the better? To see that there isn't an entity perceiving. When I began to look at what I actually am, and you can do this right now, can you find a thing, an object? Can you find something that you can point at in a particular location? I don't mean to be rude pointing at you all. Can you say that you're over here or over there? Or can you really say I'm only here? When you actually look at what's perceiving through the body. Something is using the body to hear these words and to see this image, whatever your eyes are seeing. Do you know where you actually are and aren't? And can we get more and more comfortable with not really knowing that, actually? Our whole life has usually been oriented on this idea that this is where I am, and everyone else is separate to me, and everything else is completely different to me, other than me. What if that whole premise for our version of reality is not really how it is? And this is really shocking, probably said before for me, but it was also really refreshing because I tried so hard to fix the problems of this me. So hard, as I'm sure everyone has. This me had tried to feel worthy, tried to feel accepted, tried to feel loved, valued, appreciated, wanted, needed, all of that, safe, in control, all the things that the me wants, the separate me. But if that's not who you are, what problem does that leave you with? What actually are you then, if you're not a someone? What actually do we find then when we look? If we don't find a someone, what do we find? We find something that isn't a thing. There isn't a word for something that isn't a thing, really, other than our real self. We find a version of me that's different to what we expected. We find a me that is completely insubstantial and intangible, a me that is not at all a form. It's using the form, but it's not a form. It's not in some place or in not present in other places. It's not here or over there. It doesn't have any characteristics like that. It's has more in common with the air in the room than with any of the objects in the room. It's more like the air. You can't say the air is over here or over there. It's everywhere it can be, isn't it? Everywhere, equally. And it's indivisible. Indivisible. So this is shocking then, kind of good, because we need to be shocked out of our idea of what we think we are. We even use this idea of a me, a separate me, to try to get to awakening. How successful is that going to be using this fictional character to try to reach this imaginary goal where I'm finally free of this fictional character, where I'm finally free of this fictional character that doesn't really exist. But the tools and the methods we're using to try to get free are all employed by this fictional character that we keep imagining out of sheer force of habit. And so if there's no one appearing inside the great space of being, inside consciousness, there's only consciousness. If there isn't a phenomenal me, there's my body, and then there's something that isn't a phenomenon, isn't an object, isn't a thing, that is me. Doesn't have any shape, any form. I can't touch it or point to it. I can only know it's here because I'm here. I am here. That much I know for certain. Where is that here though? How far does that reach? If I got up and walked right to the other side of the room now, I got to the side, I'd still feel like I'm here. I could never get over there. Wherever I go, it feels like here. Don't try hard to understand this. Don't struggle to understand this. Just listening, being willing to challenge ideas is enough. Ideas that we've had. What if you aren't at all what you thought you were? Is that scary or exciting or both, as it was for me? Some sense that I was leaving everything I've known about myself behind, in a way, and moving forward into something that I couldn't really describe with my usual tools. I couldn't say, it's this color and it's this big and this is what I look like. I can only say what my body looks like. I can only say what my mind's appearing like and my emotions. Can't say anything about me, really, actually. What can you tell me now about yourself? All of your history and dreams and goals and unfulfilled desires have all been pinned on this fictional character that is definitely absent without leave when we look for it. So what actually is perceiving the body? What is using the body? What is knowing thoughts? What is it about you that knows the meaning of these words? Something knows, something is aware, something is sentient, isn't it, about you? And it isn't a separate being. Let's experience it one more time. What actually do you find when you look for yourself? Not your thoughts, not your body, not your emotions. The one that says I or me, what actually is that? My first response was, I don't find anything. There's nothing here. There's nothing here that I can point to that's me. And that's correct. There is nothing here that is you. You are that space in which things appear, that beingness in which thoughts arise and recede back into. The very space in which your body is sitting is you. Not limited at all. So what is it that's perceiving bodily sensations and thoughts? Is it the noumenon perceiving or is it a body perceiving? Well, when you look, what's perceiving? How do you know what thoughts are there or not there? If there's a state of real confusion after we've sat here for 20 minutes. How do you know that something's confused? With what faculty? Is it a thing, like a body, or is it not a thing? Did you even know that you can exist as not a thing? That was really new for me when I first got that. I don't have to. There's more than just things, objects. There's another version of me. Also, is there anything that the noumenon cannot perceive without a body? Well, we could say that without the body, it can't perceive objects and sense perception and all of that. We could say that. But that's not really true, because what the body actually is and what the objects that we think we're seeing actually are is also you. So it's one of those really irritating yes and no questions. Answers, rather. We think we have a body. We think that this is a body and that we're using it to perceive through our senses. That's the common myth, isn't it? And that what we're seeing with our senses and hearing and touching and tasting are objects, things. What if that's not true either? If you really want to carry on down the rabbit hole, what if this isn't a body? What if it's a shape made by you, formlessness, condensed down into a form, but still made of the same original formlessness, not actually ever turning into a thing, just looking like a thing? And then further down the rabbit hole still, whatever we're perceiving through our senses, what is actually all of that? Is that objects too? If you're not a separate being, then neither is anybody else, actually, really. If we're not separate now, if there's no line between us really in our beingness, if there's no boundary, then are you you or am I you? Are you me? Or it all gets a bit suspect. There's just the one of us with all of these shapes we call bodies appearing here and everywhere. So the first understanding will be, no, I can't really perceive objects without a body. But then the deeper understanding is there's nothing to perceive, actually. There's no thing in existence to perceive. There's only you and all the shapes that you're making. And you've made this shape a human body so that you can come to recognize what I'm saying, understand finally, after a long period of trying to figure out what we are, whether in this body or previous ones. When I inquire, it seems that it's all the noumenon perceiving, which is pretty radical. It's radical, but it also is true, isn't it? Reality is not at all what we think it is, ever. So if all of this is really confusing, or you got stuck at some point, or you can't prove that you're not a thing, or wherever you feel stuck, then do ask for help. I am here. But you don't have to work hard also. If you don't feel that you can ask or speak up, just a curiosity to want to know as clearly as I've seen it, to want to see with the clarity and the wisdom that the sages have had over the eons. I want to know that too, and I want to know it with the same certainty. I can never doubt it again. I want to know it with such conviction that nothing can shake that, ever. Not when anybody says anything rude to me, or when some emotion comes up inside, or when I don't have enough of something, and when my body feels ill, I still know with utter conviction. Eventually, when my body is dying, when the shape is returning back to the shapelessness, I still want to know then with utter conviction. The only way to make sure of that is to come to know now. Get it done now, and then it's done. Yeah, it is all of the noumenon perceiving. There isn't anything other than that. There never was this fictional character that says me. And there isn't even such a thing as mind, really, or thoughts. Anything arising out of this great space of our being, noumenon, awareness, consciousness, has to be made out of consciousness, really, doesn't it? No matter what it looks like. So if I were you now, I'd just kind of sit with this softly, throughout the rest of your day and just say, I'd just like to know that I'm not going to struggle with it. I'm just going to chill out with it a bit and see what epiphanies come. Because whether you think you're ready or not, or worthy or not of this realization, it is already what you are. There's nothing to do with worthiness or even readiness. It's just that point where I'm finally ready to see that this might be very different to what I've thought about myself. Challenging the ideas that come up that say it's a really bad idea to go into this realization. You're going to lose something really valuable, whatever your mind is saying. You won't be able to go to work when you recognize this. You won't be able to be a parent. You won't be able to care about anyone or anything. All the things that my mind said, how are you going to care about paying the bills if you realize your utter emptiness and that everything is emptiness? None of that is true. You actually care more, fall deeply, deeply in love with everything because it seemed to be your own self. Even the bills, even work. So, what time are we on? Let me answer one more. If anybody has a question online or here in the room, I can figure out how to do this. Feel free to put your hand up. Okay. This one says, Dear Helen, I have a week of pure shame and guilt behind me. After watching your satsang about seeing through beliefs, I really became interested in what it is all about, the guilt. What I found was the opposite, innocence. I tried to find the meaning of the word, which led me to not harmful, which really felt relieving. Can you share your view on this quest and what it means to be innocent with love and appreciation? If the opposite of, if we feel guilty in our separate beingness, if we're feeling guilt and shame, and we look at whether that's actually true, what we find is that it's not true. The other option, if we're not guilty actually, the other option is innocence, isn't it? We see it in the court system. If I'm not guilty, I'm innocent. So if I'm not guilty, if I'm not the person, the character that I think has done all these things or said all these things or thought all of these things, what remains then is this innocence. Not harmfulness, not harmful to myself or anyone else, actually. Not at all to blame for anything. Anything that I have done, said, or any actions I've taken from this fictional character thinking that I am this fictional character. Can we be blamed for that? How I saw the world as a fictional character was a flawed perception. Guilt and shame are based upon this, aren't they? This whole idea I should not have done, said, or whatever that I did. What we find, though, when we can't find this legendary me, when it's not actually not there, there's just the innocence of the pure emptiness, the awareness, the noumenon, whatever we want to call it, the consciousness. She's totally innocent, totally non-harmful, totally non-violent. Innocence for me, when I started to look at it, brought up all kinds of fear. Innocence. I remember being a very small child, feeling very innocent, and the world kind of knocking that out of me in certain ways, as I'm sure we can all relate to. And I kept going deeper into this word innocence. What does it actually mean? Then there's this freshness and newness and nowness about what you actually are that's never been changed or corrupted. It's never been less than or unworthy. It's not capable of, actually. Innocence is really just a return to or a recognition of what's still here right now about us that never actually changed. The greatest lie of all is that we somehow fell from grace and became less than we need to be. That plagues our entire existence as a separate being, as this fictional character. All of its motivations are about trying to make up for some perceived flaw, some lack of innocence. We actually go right back to that innocence that's still here, never left. We've just been in our heads experiencing what we think we are than what we actually are. Innocence means that none of my thoughts about myself or anyone else are true or ever have been. A blank slate, a clean start. If my thoughts aren't true, then I don't need to keep experiencing them. I can begin to experience what everything really is, what I actually am. Peace, clarity, love, wisdom, joy. Like that feeling when you were 4 or 5 years old, if you've ever woken up in the morning, you're really excited, there's just this, I don't know if some of the Australians will get this, but this pristine white snow has not been stood on yet, totally just fresh. Nobody has ever walked upon it yet. Something like that. Anyway, so I could go on about that for a long time. Vidya has a hand up whenever you're ready.
Yeah, hi Helen.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I just wanted to share, like what you were saying is yeah, I couldn't really describe it so much today. The innocence, the in love with everything, and you said, the fresh and new. So they really stood out. Went out to some friends for lunch and been out to their place several times. But the joy and the innocence, it was like everything was fresh and new, and the appreciation of just what I was looking at, just to a simple rail on the veranda, to the trees, the paddock, whatever it was just all the same beauty. And yeah, everything, just some birds wrestling on a tree. It was like, oh wow, look at those, you know. Yeah, it was just amazing. And after we went over to have a look to see the horses, and I've never felt that sort of love. Like I just hugged them and was patting them, and so excited. Everything was really exciting. And I remember you saying about Christmas, you know, before Christmas. And I recognized that on the way home, because that's what my whole day was like. It was just to eating the meal, to everything was exciting and beautiful and interesting. You know, I'm usually not so interested. But I was just interested in everything.
Why does that have to go? Why does that have to leave, that feeling? Does it have to go? What was it like to go through your entire existence with that feeling? And you kind of learn how to tone it down a bit, you know, when you're in a supermarket. You don't want to be running up to strangers going, oh my God, I love you, you know. But it's still there inside, this massive wow, you know, just this sense of awe and wonder that all of this is divine sculpture, including my very own self. Everything I'm looking at is just divine, everything, whether it's something inside, thoughts and emotions, what they're actually made out of, or outside, some other being or something. And it's, everything has a sameness about it then, not the boring sameness that mind imagines, but everything is experienced the very same way.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. That's what it was like today. Everything was, yeah, everything was the same. Yeah, yeah, and appreciation and yeah, it's just beautiful. So yeah,
You did all of this just for you. All of this is for you, isn't it?
Yeah, what a wonderful way to experience myself, you know, and in everything, the same love, the same joy, the same appreciation. Looking at the plant and the flower, how it was shaping, and then hugging the horse, you know, there's absolutely no difference, just excitement. And yeah, it's just so, yeah, I know I experienced joy before and didn't think it could, well, yeah, I know you're always saying it's gonna, you know, got to get better and stuff. I don't know what better is, but it was pretty awesome.
Richer like this, isn't it? Like deeper and richer and more obvious and more awe-inspiring, more and more.
Yeah. And the freedom, like there's the freedom of just being free. I think that's what the innocence is that everything is just, you know, it actually felt like as if from a, you know, that innocence of a child where everything was in wonder, you know, it was just fresh and new. And yeah, so I'm just, thank you so much.
You had no ideas about what was going to happen that day. You just had no idea. You just discovered the day as it went on with that openness, and yeah, right back to that, but consciously, so we don't lose it again, ever.
Yeah. I can't say I did anything for it. Even when we left the house, I was really excited because, you know, we're going out. You know, it's just like where before it was, yeah, it was just, I know we'll be going. There's a freedom of thinking about anything. There wasn't any thoughts about anything. Maybe that's, yeah, so everything is experienced as it truly is.
Even if thoughts there, you can make a conscious choice. I'd like to actually experience what this actually is. I don't want to go an old rerun of my thoughts from the last time. What's it like to just, all right, mine says, you're going to get there and dinner will be running late and it's going to be like this and that. And last time you felt this way. And you just put all that aside for a moment. And what is actually happening here? It's a totally different level of reality.
Yeah, and being really happy. You know, she told me she's going to be a grandma, you know, in a few weeks, and I was just so excited. It was like as if it was happening to me. Well, in one way, it is. I was really excited, and yeah, it's just a beautiful, yeah. It's just wonderful to feel like that for everything, you know. Yeah.
Enjoy it. It just gets better and better. Definitely.
Thank
you for sharing.
Thank you. Love you very much.
Love you too. Any other questions or sharings? Anyone else want to ask anything? Nobody has an issue. Nobody's struggling with anything. I'll come to you in a moment, Linda. Yeah.
I'm not really struggling at this very moment, but I had a strange, over the last few days, I had one of those things that came up that just come up quite a lot now and again, and then it'll go for ages. And then, but this weekend was very strong. I've been using the question, what does it mean to be the noumenon and not a thing, which we talked about a few days ago. And with that, I felt a tremendous new release of energy and peace, coming back to sort of place I'd known before that I felt had faded a little bit. And then at the weekend, I was just talking to someone and my energy was quite low. And suddenly all these judgments about myself just came up really strong, the way I saw myself, everything. And that threw me off for a day. And I actually sent a question into you, but it's not been read out. Maybe it's not there yet, but so
I think I've got one in there, a little, yeah.
Yeah, you can ignore that question now because I've said it here. And I just thought I'd share that. I mean, I feel incredibly peaceful here. And this morning I just woke up with that. I like to call it emptiness, but it's just completely pristinely empty. And then slowly things come into play, the mind. But that my mind's been pretty quiet today, and certainly in this Satsang there's a depth of that silence.
You didn't even need a cup of tea this time to do it.
No, I didn't. No, I thought I'd leave that out today.
Well, why is this coming up then now? You know, if you're really working with this question, what is it like to not be a thing, to be the self, the noumenon? And then this thing comes up that's all about judgment and you know, self-criticism and all of that. If we can, and I know you know this, but it's always good to hear it again, that this is coming up now, because once you really begin to work with a question like that, you get this deep and rich desire to experience that all the time. You don't ever want it to fade.
No.
But our experience is that it does. So these things have to come up so that we can then examine them. And the only way then to have constant peace and constant unbroken experience of emptiness is to question whatever seems to interrupt it. So this is coming up to aid your questioning rather than to get in the way of it in that, you know. And sometimes the question for me began to be, can I be interrupted with this? Can this be only an experience? Or can it be something that's constant and permanent? And if I'm already looking from that place, does any thought or emotion need to disturb me when it comes up? Even this kind of tsunami of self-judgment that happens sometimes when something's said or whatever. So you've been asking this question, what is it like to be that? And here's a kind of answer. Well, here's where some part of us still feels that this can affect it, but can this be as the self? Can I be affected when this happens? Am I actually affected by anything that goes on in the body and mind? It's for a deeper looking.
I think I was just shocked that it could come up so deeply again, because it's usually just very sporadic, and it only
It's
just
the only
bites at the
way,
heels.
though,
But this, I
usually.
was submerged in it completely
Yeah.
for a day. It totally shocked me.
So here is the answer. What is it like to be the noumenon already looking from there? And the experiences of being submerged in something that you can't seem to get out of. That's what we need to question. Can this be how it is for the noumenon, for the self, for the awareness, actually? Can it actually occur for me now? Yes, I'm having an experience of it, but do I have to keep having that experience? And I had to really question this myself. It comes up strongly like that to kind of stimulate some questioning here, because you don't want to keep having this experience.
No, it's just afterwards it was shown clearly that the emptiness or awareness, whatever we want to call it, the presence was there at that time as well, although it seemed to have disappeared. And it's not very often I have an experience where it seems to completely disappear. That's what freaks me out, is when it's like, oh my God, this is totally back in person.
So yeah, when that happens, are you being a someone or the emptiness? When you're submerged in something like that and the emptiness seems to disappear, then it must be that identity has gone back to believing ourselves to be
absolutely,
someone,
that's what shocked me, that it was an absolute belief, and that it just came up, blindsided me.
So it's only just nudging to say a little more confirmation needed here that this too cannot affect me. Even when my attention goes to thoughts and emotions and all of that, still I remain as the emptiness, unaffected by that. Whatever my attention is looking at, I can't always control. But if I know that I'm not affected by that, by proving what remained undisturbed throughout that whole thing, did it actually go?
No,
and was this happening to me, this submergence, or in me?
Yeah, that's very
to
clearly
some
seen
idea.
afterwards, that it didn't actually go, that it was still there. There was still that awareness, or that emptiness simultaneously was there with whatever was going on, the paradox. But the other thing I wanted to ask you just briefly, if you've got time, so with the question of what's it like to be the noumenon and not a thing, kind of throws me into that immediately, into that emptiness, like that, you know, in Neo-Advaita they'd say, you know, there's no me. And whenever that thought comes up, there's no me, it just instantly, it's like it acts for me like a question, what am I? It's like, it'll just say there's no me, and all of a sudden, whoosh, everything disappears. You said, and what's throwing me a little bit is, you said once, it's nice to hang out there for a while, but so after this whole thing happened, and I went back to the question, what's it like to be the noumenon, not a thing? The little thing was biting, saying, oh, but that's just hanging out. Like Helen says, you can't hang out there all the time.
Well, this is happening so that you can hang out there all the time, right? What's going to come up is to show you where you still go back to believing yourself to be a someone.
Yeah.
And it might not be about actual guilt or anger or shame at this point, or self-judgment, but the idea, more general idea, that whatever's happening to the body mind can affect me, can pull me out of my peace, or away from the emptiness, that I am something that can be affected by whatever's happening in the body and mind. So of course we want that emptiness, of course we do, but then we must examine even these ideas that are going to keep us going in and seemingly in and out of it. That's just an experience rather than a constant effortless knowing in that.
So do you think it's enough then that it's now been seen? I don't have to kind of keep going into it about you know.
If it needs to be looked at, it'll happen again. Something will
Right.
happen, and it might not be that you're submerged for a whole day. Maybe it's just a couple of minutes, but you'll notice, hang on, I'm actually believing here still. I need a little more confirmation here.
Yeah, that's what normally
Yeah.
happens, just a quick flash, and then I'll check into it quite quickly and can move it. But this one was like, oh, I'd hate to be in that all the time again. You know, that's how I was all the time before this.
If you take those as little nudges, that you could be a little more convinced than you are that you're not affected by any of this.
Mm,
And it's there's never a final point of conviction where I mean, there's a point where nothing that happens to the body mind touches you, and you know that. But along to that point, you might have to just confirm a little bit deeper.
So it's confirming, like before, I felt I was really confirming with the question that you gave all the time. I like just having one question. I like to keep it simple. And then after, it's like, do I just keep staying with that question? Is that?
Whatever the experience seems to be, I would use that as your question when that thing happens. So if my experiences have been deeply affected by some thoughts and emotions, I would ask that question. Am I actually affected by these? Can I be affected by these?
Yeah, I did do
Until
quite
it's
a lot
so
of that.
profoundly obvious that I can't be, that I don't need the question anymore. That whatever happens to the body mind, I still remain in my equanimity, my peace. And, you know, the body's just doing what it's doing in there.
Lovely.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Lovely. So we'll take Lindy, and then we'll leave it there for today. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, well, I think you sort of answered really well. I'm not sure I really got a question, but I just want to say thank you for this morning. I saw clearer, perhaps than ever, that I'm not my thoughts. You know, and I know we're not talking about separation here, but I could see the difference between the thoughts and who I really am, and
This
it was
thought
just
constructed self that we think we are.
yeah.
Get a little more distance from it every time you look.
Yeah. So that was really helpful. It doesn't happen very often, but these glimpses are so good. So I think it may be an idea for me just to listen to what you talked us through earlier, perhaps every day if I can, perhaps for the next few days or whatever, and see what happens.
Don't work hard at it. Just, I'd like to see it a little clearer. I'd like to see it a little deeper. Just a nice, gentle, soft intention there, you know?
Yeah. I think there's just such an anxiety to grasp, you know. It's so wonderful when I can actually see it. And I just think when I'm listening to you, why can't I see it more often, you know? And I get off the call, and everything just sort of comes back in, really. I'm sure that's everybody's experience, but somehow I just...
Certainly was my experience at first. It was very sporadic, just little glimpses once every 6 months, and then it began to speed up. And then after a couple of experiences of reality, I want that all the time. I want that, and I want that effortlessly. And that's the anxiety that you say, is this desire. I really, really want this more than anything. I want this. Just questioning that. Why can't you have the same experience as me right now? Why can't you actually? And it's not a question you need to answer here, but you know, anyone who was interested in that question, why can't you actually? You know, if I'm already looking from the place I'm trying to get to, do I have to get rid of all my thoughts and karmic patterns and all that nonsense before I can experience that? Do I have to go through a process and a you know, the process that takes time and then eventually arrive at awakening? Or can I be free right now and still continue to examine what thoughts need to be examined, as we were just saying earlier in that? What thoughts are you believing about why you can't have these glimpses more often? You know, something to take into the rest of your day with you. What really is in the way of me having more of this and more often and then continuously? And I had to look at this. Well, you know, I can't experience myself when I'm driving or when I'm working or when I'm, you know, all these thoughts. You know, when my mind gets busy, then I can't focus on myself. Is that true, actually? You know, really, all of that. Just noticing whatever ideas are coming up for you that seem to make this just a momentary glimpse.
Yeah, I think there's quite a push-pull. It feels in my body as well as resistance. It's really wonderful. And then I can feel it now. Part of me just wants to get up and just go away. And, you know, it's just...
Does that even have to go away before you have this knowingness? Will that ever really go? Does that need to stop you? Do you even need to overcome resistance? Did you manage to get rid of it just now when you had this glimpse, or did the glimpse just happen despite the resistance?
I'm not sure I can answer that. It feels very sort of muddly, really.
It's
So,
okay. I'm just kind of poking at the assumptions there.
yeah, I know. There are so many assumptions there, you know, that just, yeah.
What if nothing can stop you, actually?
There's something that I definitely am feeling, that there's much more trust now than there used to be, as in this really can happen. So that's really great, although I don't think that very often. But
those are new and better thoughts coming in, aren't they? From this is never going to happen to this can happen. And then for me, it was actually this is happening just sporadically. And then this is happening more often. And then this is happening for longer and longer periods. That was the thought process, you know. So you can see that turning around. That's good. That's good news. You're doing amazing. I hope you know that you're doing amazing.
Thank you. It's good to hear that.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
I know your mind won't agree with me, but I don't need it to. So, yeah. Lovely. Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Thanks.
Okay. So I'll leave it there for today. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful questions and presence. Namaste.